Okay, so whilst we're waiting for my colleague Zoltan to appear, um, this is a round table today, and it's very much your session. So please come on in and share your video because otherwise you're going to be listening to me for a long time, and I'm sure you don't want to do that. So please, share your video and audio and come on in. And the way that we'll run this is that I will set the scene, make some proposals, and then I'll ask you all to comment because, as I said, it's very much your session. So that's how we're going to do it. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to begin by setting the scene and sharing my screen. So let's get started. So today we are going to be talking about digital transformation in SAP-based shared services. And what we're going to be doing really is positioning a couple of questions to you. And with Zoltan's help, and Zoltan is from Nokia, who are a very large GBS based in Budapest in Hungary, and he's going to give you some of his experiences as well. So let's get started. You heard me talk about Zoltan, that he's from the Center of Excellence in Nokia. But myself, Tim Woodhouse, I work for Winshuttle, and we spend a lot of time in Eastern Europe, in Poland, in Hungary, in Bulgaria, in Czech Republic, and anyone that I haven't mentioned, I'm sorry. But we spend a lot of time there working with shared services and GBS leaders, particularly about digital transformation of shared services processes, finance or HR or logistics, those things that are sometimes never at the forefront of being digitalized and made easy or simple. And that's what we do. So Winshuttle is really a rapid development and integration layer around SAP. Hence why we positioned our session today relating to GBS and shared services that are based on SAP. What we offer is a way to transform the way that your staff and your users interact with SAP. We take away the whole idea of anyone needing to actually be signed in and in SAP. We take away the need for moving spreadsheets or emailing colleagues. Everything is taken care of in our digital process flow. And that's what we do. And we do it for an awful lot of customers. So the world's largest global brands trust us to deliver these solutions, whether it be in finance or HR or logistics or in master data or in product information. We transform the way people use their host systems, and particularly SAP. So, coming away from us, let's talk about you. Where are we in digital transformation? So, I think we were moving along quite slowly, really. And then we had a little problem. And I do think that our industry is now coming to terms with this and embracing it. A year ago, it was very much a case of being in shock, for sure. And here you see this little statement here, digital transformation is years away. And then there's the COVID wrecking ball. And then right after COVID hit us, it was encouraging that when we got to the summer, some of the work done by people like IDC in these market surveys started to show how priorities had changed. And as you can see here, the number one priority is to transform the employee experience so that they can become more productive and they can be portable in their place of work. Is it the office or is it remote? And this really means digitizing these complex processes and not relying on host ERPs or spreadsheets or emails. That really is too broken, too fragmented. And you'll see in this survey, it even rated amongst creating better customer engagement. That was really interesting. And in this one from HFS, you'll see the fact that it scored #1 in their 2020 survey, accelerating digital initiatives as COVID becomes the burning platform. So, what we saw was industry leaders coming out and making it clear that now was the time to move. And this was now, in the timescale, this was about June of 2020, when all of these surveys and comments started coming out. And in fact, I think we also saw an acceleration of initiatives immediately from summertime. I'm going to be inviting some of you to join us in a moment, so please do come in, otherwise you'll be hearing a lot from me. And the first thing I'm going to pose the question is, in shared services and GBS, how might our cost model change? How effective could digital transformation be in terms of the cost of each transaction that we process in our centers? And to set this up, I'm going to play you a video. So please turn your volume up a little. It's probably one of the best digital transformation presentations that I have ever seen. It's delivered by Peter Moller of Deloitte at an ABSL meeting. And listen to what he says about how he thinks we can follow this, well, can only be described as an amazing organization that you see on the screen, Amazon. He believes that we can commoditize our transactional flow in a very similar way. So turn your volume up. It's about 1 minute 50 seconds, but listen to what Peter says.
Someone came to me the other day after a conference and said, look, I've got two problems with that Amazon test. They said, I was thinking about this. And firstly, Amazon don't have the complexity. They're a digital native. They've only been around 15, 20 years. They don't have the complexity that we have, the ERP system, so on and so forth. And secondly, it's a nice to have. It's bells and whistles. You know, customer experience. Yeah, I'd love it if my customers had a nicer experience, but it's not going to save the money, is it? There's no business case. It's not going to reduce costs. And I thought about that and I thought, no, I think you're wrong on both fronts. If you think about it, think about Amazon. They probably have, what, millions of products, maybe 1 million suppliers they deal with. I don't know, but it's probably not far off. Certainly tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of customers. And for all of those suppliers and customers, they've got to get the goods from the suppliers to the customers. They've got to handle all the logistics and delivery. They've got to handle all the payments. Are you telling me that's not complex? That's unbelievably complex. No, there's huge complexity. What they do really, really well is they hide all of that complexity from you, the customer. All you see is a mobile phone, you have a finger, you have 30 seconds and you do some swiping. That's all you see. You don't have to think, now, do I go through to their procurement department for this, or do I need their IT, or maybe I need to go to finance, oh, it's after 6 o'clock, I need to go to HR, no, I need to go. Because they've cut out the complexity for you. It makes it look really, really simple. And secondly, when it comes to the cost, if you think about it, I've used Amazon for maybe 8, 10 years. I've bought, it must be hundreds of things. I have never had to phone them up and have a human-to-human call with anyone from Amazon. So for them, I've been really low cost. You think about where the costs are in a shared service organization. You've got a lot of people taking calls. Every time you take a call because someone can't work out what's going on, if it's an IT help desk, that's probably 10 euros right there for that call. If it has to go to a second line specialist, multiply that 2, 3, 4-fold. That's going to cost 20, 30, 40 euros. Now, if you can get them away from the call, maybe onto web chat, that might make it 6 or 7 euros. If you can get them onto self-service, if you have a portal, you're suddenly reducing cost to maybe 10 cents. You're going to take 95% of the cost out. And guess what? If you can get rid of the problem in the first place because your continuous improvement program has found what the root cause is and you've eliminated that root cause, the cost is zero.
Wow. So, as I said, that was probably one of the best presentations that I saw on positioning digital transformation in our industry and how far we could go. But Peter claims a dramatic, absolutely dramatic fall in cost. I wonder if you feel the same. I also feel the same to talk about putting all of your processes in, let's call it a digital finance hub. It might look something like this, where your customers come here as the first point of contact, and it's the solution that guides them through the information they need to provide to you to make sure that when you transact the business in the shared services, you're transacting a predefined process. Data is pre-collected. It can only be the correct data, and it's pre-approved. So by the time it gets to you, you have to complete the transaction, or maybe you want to interact back with the originator. But it all stays in the digital world. So that's what we're asking you. And the question would be, and I'm going to invite you to come in and talk to us about that. Where are you on this digital transformation path? And do you agree with Peter around how you can commoditize this into very much a portal-based concept? And what I can see is that we don't have many takers. So Zoltan, I'm just going to ask you to comment on this. You know, you guys at Nokia have taken this on very much. Do you see the opportunity to dramatically reduce costs by making a process completely digital?
Absolutely. Can you hear me now, Tim? Yes.
Beautifully.
Okay, it's much better now. So dramatic cost reduction, and here I just recently realized in our organization that we need to take things into two pieces. First of all, those processes that have direct impact on the revenue generating or the cost generating processes. And what do I mean? Order to cash and supply chain and source to pay processes. Because if you can go digital on those processes, then you definitely impact a much bigger chunk of your cash and much bigger chunk of your cost, and again, which is cash just from the other side. If you can go digital on those processes which are generating internal cost, like record to report, for example, that's also going to can save you a hell lot of money. But the question will be that which one will win your internal business cases, because the resources that you need to share among these classic shared services processes is limited, and then you will need to make a decision where you are putting your money. So Nokia, which is the company that I really work for now is saving or can achieve a year-on-year roughly 10 to 15% saving on their internal process cost in the shared services, and that lasts now for a couple of years. And previously, I was working for the Vodafone shared services, and we had at that time the same targets achieved year on year. And the main driver was moving the processes to semi-digital to truly digital processes.
Super. Well, thanks, Zoltan. Anyone else who wants to comment, please come in. I'll give you a few seconds to do that, and otherwise we'll move on to our next question. No, I don't see anyone joining, so let's move on to the next question. The next question is rather interesting and quite provocative to you guys as GBS shared service leaders. Let's take a look. The question I want to pose now is, can GBS own and drive your digital transformation? Well, right at the end of 2020, the HFS report suggested not. And HFS suggested that enterprises can transform digitally and get the benefits that they need pretty much without a GBS. So they're saying that this can be taken in centrally and they don't really need the complexity. I think that's not true. And as you can see from the model here, again, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm saying it's a very interesting proposition. They show the journey through shared services into GBS and now to something that they call One Office. And you'll notice that what it really talks about is platforms and tech. It doesn't really talk about people. And that's where I think this is fundamentally wrong. Because whilst, as you heard from Zoltan, processes can be improved and the cost of handling those processes can deliver significant savings, they will still require the expertise and the knowledge base that is in GBS and shared services. So the HFS position is very provocative. And that's something that I wanted to consider with you all today. As you can see, HFS concentrate very much about digitization and around systems and platforms, and very little mention of the expertise that will sit behind it. The expertise that will unblock the exceptions that ultimately happen. Yes, there'll be smooth, touchless transactions in a digital world, but there'll be those that require intervention. And that's my question to you. So do we think that GBS can handle this? And how do you handle it? Again, I would invite you in to come and talk with us. And please do. The way that we see our largest customers handling this is that the GBS actually becomes the owner of the digital transformation world. And we've seen that in the creation of these things that we call COEs, Centers of Excellence. And this is very much why I asked Zoltan to join us today. And what we have here is a little bit of preparation. Thankfully, Zolly, we did the preparation as we don't have a huge audience. And what I'd like Zoltan to do is generally talk you through how he's approached, or how him and his team has approached this ownership of the digital transformation. So Zoltan, I'm going to cue you up to your first slide.
Okay.
And perhaps if I'm going to do the slide controlling, if you can just give me the signal and I'll click the button.
Yeah, sure. So on the digital transformation and on the ownership side, a little bit of forward before jumping into the presentation. It is very important to clarify together with IT that who needs to own what in this whole equation and the whole transformation journey. Because obviously the center of excellence teams are aware of the processes, and IT teams in a traditional environment, they do the development and they are providing the support of the solutions that are implemented. I don't know what's your experience, but this traditional model have some tiny problem in terms of speed. So it wasn't really a exceptional case when someone at the Center of Excellence team submitted a digitization request to the IT, and it took 6 months just to get an approval for it. And after the approval, it got really into the queue of to be developed. So if you could just give one slide, move one slide, Tim, to the next one. Just let's review what is the traditional way of creating automation. So the general point of view is that these should be done by IT. Okay, so the next one is what do we have? Can you go next? Because you can scroll down on this page because it's animated and it was for my thought logic. But yeah, thank you. So the symptom, as I described, is really the time that it takes to get it into a channel or into a queue, which will be developed at a certain point of time by IT. And what's the problem with that? So the IT have the point of view that they have the knowledge of creating these automation, and this can be true definitely, especially with the traditional platforms and tools requiring special knowledge. So they have the capability, right? But they are also under cost pressure, so they are continuously shrinking their organization. Therefore, it's the development capacity is also shrinking. Therefore, the various initiatives in the other organization, which is required to be delivered to fulfill their own targets, are ending up in a much longer queue than it was earlier. So it's really competing with each other for the same resources, and streams or organizations inside the company becomes competitors, and that's not what we want. Definitely.
Yeah.
The third problem is, I think, with the waterfall projects. I acted several times as a connection between IT developers and business people. And no matter how much time we spend on trying to define our requirements, the best we could get to is 90%. So we could define our requirements 90% crystal clear to the IT at the beginning for the developers, and then everything that was falling into the 10% ended up in change request. which is again, which is again had to be reapproved. The additional budget had to be found to fund it, and then the developer time had to be reserved. But of course, the change requests are also going into a queue. So it was it's not really a nice situation with these kind of developments. So what we try to think of is, okay, so what can we do about it? And in the heart of the digital transformation, we sit down with IT and we were thinking of, okay, how do we crack this very hard nut, because it's an unpleasant situation for everyone. And what we came up is to try to use as much as possible low code or no code tools and platforms. And if you go to the next slide, Tim, please.
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah, thank you. So how does and why do we say low code, no code can help in the digital transformation to move fast?
Very important. If you can explain.
Yes, so by changing into a low-code, no-code platforms and intentionally focusing in the selection. And Tim, if you could just scroll again to the bottom. Yeah. So what does low-code, no-code mean? Earlier, I mentioned that traditional platforms are requiring special knowledge. Low-code, no-code platform does not require special knowledge. Of course, or very special knowledge, I should say. You don't need to have an IT diploma in programming to be able to do whatever you want. These low-code, no-code platforms are really designed for center of excellence type of people who can design their solutions on their own, usually using graphical interfaces, just to put like a Lego, the pieces together and build whatever you want. So it takes away the capability bottleneck from the problem. And if you take away the capability problem, then you immediately open up the possibility to involve non-IT people as developer. And as a result, the developer capacity can be increased because you can invite business people to define their own solutions, or not just design, deliver their own solutions. And by that, dramatically, you can reduce the waiting time to start a development. And it's also easier to apply an agile delivery approach because, yeah, if it's designed 90% right, the capacity is there. You just discuss it with your own colleagues that this should look a little bit differently, or it should behave a little bit differently. And there you go, you are changing it because you don't need to submit to CR. It's your resources that you have the control over. So you give the priority to them to fix the 10%, or you go somewhere else.
Absolutely. So Zoltan, your approach here is very smart, because the initial situation is that anything you need, you go to IT. And we all know that when you go to IT, we're dealing with an extremely busy area of the company, often with budgets being cut. So you then join a very long queue, don't you?
Yep.
And your ability then to be agile has gone.
Exactly. That's the problem. So the annual business target, if you have to wait 6 months for a developer, after waiting 3 to 4 months to get it approved, get your initiative approved, you're 1 year gone. You have no chance to reach it.
So you how can I put it, countered, or you stopped the argument that you were trying to develop a shadow IT, because you were not. What you were saying was, if we invest in the right technology that falls into this domain called low code, no code, then we are not trying to be IT. We are trying to be a GBS center of excellence where we can deliver the solutions. That's very much seems to be your approach.
Yes, and that is the approach. And one thing that we had to very heavily, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't a nice beer over a table with IT to discuss that, because it's they are also in a position, and they are rightly defending several positions in their organization, because it's the one side of the coin is development. Okay, but what do we do with support? So do you, and the argument was from them, do you guys want to support your own solutions forever? Because then you become a shadow IT. And we said that, no. We don't want that, of course, because we own our own streams, our own processes, and we are ready and ready to act as developers. But after the development, we are not going to monitor the infrastructure. We are not going to monitor well, we don't want to necessarily monitor the healthiness of the platform or the solution, or the database has in the background has fooled or reached its capacity, or there are stuck items and I need to restart jobs, or whatever it is. Basically.
So all that horrible, all that IT stuff, you don't want that.
Absolutely. So we are not trained on them. It's not our business. It's not our service. It's the IT service for us and for the platform itself, and it's and for the solution. So
what you had to do there was quite difficult. You had to persuade IT that you were doing the right thing, but you still needed them as a good friend, because they needed to do what you would call the basic IT work to keep the solutions alive in the long term.
Exactly, and not just in the support, because if you go to the next slide, Tim.
Will do. Hold on. There you go.
Yeah, it's the support. So there are still some very big borderline between development and support. So it's usually within IT, it's also distinguished into two separate organizations. And there are handoffs between the developers and the support. So you need to define the mechanisms, and they have a well-established mechanisms, how they are moving it from the project mode to the business as usual support mode. And they have an awful lot of SOCs and other controls in place to ensure sustainable support for the various solutions.
Yes.
And this is what we had to crack as well, because we were also in a situation that our guys, just to be able to meet their own targets, started to become smart and find unauthorized ways to digitize their own processes, and to automate their own processes. A classic example for this is writing Excel macros.
Yeah.
Or using freeware softwares that can be downloaded and used on your laptop or whatever.
And how do you stop that?
The common symptom was, or the common situation was, that after the development, which everyone was happy about it, because we saved a lot of time for that. Okay, but the guy who developed became the support as well, because it couldn't be handed over to anyone who is really there to support the various solutions. And what does that mean? So someone in the general ledger team, for example, becomes a developer and the support guy at the same time.
Yeah.
Although then it's usually one person. And what if that one person just leaves the company?
Everything's finished.
It's gone. It's
Oh.
gone. Everything that you achieved can be thrown out on the window, and that's not good either.
No.
So
now this is really interesting because you're almost advising our audience here that being a center of excellence and being quite friendly with IT is great, but also you're sort of warning against little pockets in the organization trying to be their own little mini IT as well. And you think the center of excellence actually stops this happening? Because you're right, the guy in the general ledger suddenly becomes the most important person, and if he leaves, all of their tools fall apart, and you need to prevent that as well, don't you?
Yes, and IT is rightly saying in such situation that, guys, I wasn't involved, I have no clue about it, there is no the documentation is not right because it's not done according to our standards and our methodologies. You haven't met our controls, so I'm not going to support it. Or I can support it, but I have to start all over again, and you need to pay for it. Thank you.
So therefore, the COE is really important to maintain these standards as well.
Unless they implement a low code. Yeah, they need to maintain these standards. But how can they maintain these standards? Only through a joint project with the IT guys. So the control of the development remains with IT, but not the actual doing of the development remains with IT.
But you don't want that.
Unless you have a low-code, no-code platform
Hence
where you are capable to do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So your investment in low-code, no-code digital transformation technology means that you can still develop and deliver, but at the same time maintain quality standards within the organization. Unlike the guy in the general ledger, which is pretty much uncontrolled, you've been able to, well, really answer both questions. Take development from IT, still keep them as your friend, but also build and maintain a quality and compliance standard as well.
Yes, and that was their major argument, or every argument that we had at the beginning. In the background, that was in their mind always, whether that's untold or told. After a while, we realized that, okay, if we can do that, then we are still then it's a win-win situation.
Yes.
IT is not frustrated about the unauthorized developments. They are not frustrated that everyone is yelling on them that they need to deliver, but they don't have their own capacity, or they have their own capacity and cost targets, and business people do not meet their targets either because they don't get the necessary resources.
So really, the idea of the GBS COE sort of makes everyone happy, because the GBS leaders get agile development through these no-code, low-code digital solutions, i.e. they get things done fast, they affect their budgets much faster without waiting 6 or 9 months for something to happen. But at the same time, you actually make friends with IT, because you also say, I will maintain standards and there'll be no rogue developments happening in the corner. So you're sort of everybody's friend.
Yes. Just to just,
One word, yeah.
just one. So yeah, in one word, yes.
Yeah.
And that and don't get me wrong, it takes time to discuss this with IT and to realize it took it took some time to get to a point, to get to this point.
I know your story, and of course the audience doesn't, but it was a long process, but you certainly won in the end, because it's been a transformation in your organization. So Zoltan, before we finish, I wanted to ask you the question. So you remember at the start of this little section here, HFS, very well known, were considering challenging the GBS world and saying, we're not sure you're the people to deliver. So let's take that situation. Do you think you could deliver it without the very, very deep understanding that is invested in the GBS organization?
No.
No.
Not at all. Because
not a chance.
not a chance.
Yeah.
And that is for 3 reasons. One is if you are the more fragile your ways of executing the same processes, the less chance or the more money you are paying to digitize and automate it. We all know that. That's on the table for 10, 15 years now. First standardize and then automate and digitize. So the GBS, one of the concepts to become a to establish a GBS is, or the goals, is to standardize the processes across the organization and cross-border organizations. So having a digital transformation in your organization, it's nearly a prerequisite, in my opinion,
yes,
to have a GBS in place. Otherwise, you won't have anyone in your driving seat who can make decisions from the process point of view.
And I think that's a brilliant point, because what people often forget in our industry, in your industry, is the level of expertise and the years and years of investment in understanding a multinational, very disparate organization and trying to, as Zoltan said, harmonize that process so that eventually, when we get to where we are today in 2021, you can digitize it. So really, Zoltan, you're saying it's that years and years of experience that actually make it really possible at all.
Exactly. And looking into the future, because I sometimes smile when we are saying intelligent automation. That's really great, and that's a very fancy word. But who brings the intelligence in the automation? Is it the tool itself, or is the human, or a combination of the right tool and the human? And I think it's the third one, because no matter how intelligent that system, or machine learning, for example, the machine learns what you do. Whether you do the right thing or the wrong thing, it will not evaluate. So if your business requirements are changing from one day to another or 1 year to another, and you need to change your internal ways of working, your systems will still act the same because they learned how to do things in the past. So you are conserving the way that this is how we did in the past type of mentality. So you need to have someone with a brain to think of that. Okay, how do I need to change my process to change to adopt to the changed environment?
Indeed.
And that's the human. And that's, I think, is the human.
It is the human, but even more so, I think it's GBS professionals, because I think people too often think that anything to do with shared services and GBS is a function that helps the organization, but they don't realize the depth of knowledge and professionalism. So, Zoltan, I think you've answered that question beautifully. And, you know, in the few minutes we've got left, I would invite some of the audience to come in and join us in the last few minutes, because what you heard there was the most powerful argument I have heard in a long time that says the GBS can own digital transformation as long as we choose the right technology. We don't want to become a shadow IT. We don't want to do that at all. But what you also heard there was that the years and years of expertise that's deep in your organization actually is the only way to make digital transformation work. And the idea that you can approach it in the way that you heard from HFS really will not work. So I will in the last few minutes, if anyone wants to join, that's great. But I'm going to end now in saying to you that what we've heard today is that digital transformation, you heard Peter say it, can have a revolutionary cost in both your customer experience, and when we say customer, we mean your customers, the internal ones. They can have a much nicer, graphical, simplified, Amazonized environment. You can save incredible amounts of time and therefore money in processing cost. And finally, you heard the clearest case possible that you should be the owners of this and that you should be the centers of excellence. And I'll thank Zoltan from Nokia's GBS Center of Excellence in Budapest for his input today, because I think his input really made today's session work. So I don't see any Q&A and I don't see anyone joining us. So from me, thank you all very much. It would have been lovely to speak to some of you, but I think we still presented a pretty strong case there, don't you? So thanks everyone, and bye for now. Thanks,
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye for now.